NFL draft. I'm happy it's over, Josh. I don't know how you feel. I am Scott Bischoff. I'm joined by Josh Liskowitz. Uh, Josh, how do you feel about the draft being over?
You know what? I thought it was going to be a huge relief, but now that it's over with, I kind of want to start watching more film.
I was thinking the same thing. We need to get some. We need to work on some junior film. Seems to be
Yep.
a lot of drama going on with people maybe taking themselves a little too seriously about prospects jumping into the draft because somebody wrote that they thought they would get drafted high.
Oh, whom? Who would you be talking
Well,
about?
there's a lot of people talking about it, but it's just like, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, I understand how the process works, and trust me, I've been manipulated by agents into wanting to say certain things and wanting things to get out there. But at the end of the day, there's something called a draft advisory board, and that seems to be what they should be using, not anything that people who aren't a part of that process, meaning the draft advisory board process. There's a reason why those guys are there. Anyway, I know that's a side note, but so
Well,
what?
can I make two quick comments on that?
Of course.
Number one, on the side of our accountability as draft analysts, uh, I think it needs to be made clear when guys are saying player X is this kind of player, whether they're talking about their own film studies or information they've gotten from someone else. I think that ends up getting confused, and that's where the muddy waters kind of start, especially for prospects when they're hearing different things, and it's might not necessarily be truthful or even factual information, or even information that the person relaying it is seeing firsthand. The other side of the equation is, at some point, when we turn 18, we're legal adults, right? So
Supposed
at
to
some
be.
point, prospect has to take accountability for himself and make the decision for himself, and the people around him have to do that too. I understand there's different situations for every guy, but ultimately they're accountable for themselves. So I don't think it's fair to blame guys like Todd McShay for guys going early that shouldn't be. At some point, it's on the person that does it themselves.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, you make a comment in January, and a kid declares in January, and a whole bunch of stuff goes off the rails over the next 4 months. Who are you going to blame,
Right.
right? It seems like it's a little bit like, you know, there were a lot of juniors in this class. There were a lot of kids who were promised a lot of things, and it didn't work out for a lot of them. But that's how the game is played. It's unfortunate that it works that way, but that's just how it goes.
Right.
Did you want to make another point about something?
Yeah. I mean, at what point do they realize, oh wait, there's 100 of us coming out?
Hmm.
Some of us aren't going to get drafted. At some point, that light bulb's going to come off. One of the guys that did not come out very well could have been the number one overall player in the entire draft. I'm talking about the defensive end slash outside linebacker from Clemson,
Vic
Vic
Beasley?
Beasley, who we'll
Yeah.
be talking all about next year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was going to get drafted top 5 regardless, but he made the decision to stay. So, I mean, I understand there's different factors that go into it, but at some point they got to be accountable to themselves as well. It can't just be a situation of listening to media outlets that really don't know what they're talking about.
Well, and let's be honest. Is a little bit of this agents blaming the media because they can?
Sure.
I'm not saying that agents are that's I don't know that that's what's happening because I haven't heard any of that stuff.
Well,
But
I will say this too. I mean, anyone listening to this, I'm sure they know we're referencing the smarmy article that Mike Florio put out a couple days ago. And let's be honest, everyone knows who are his sources, agents. So
Mhm.
guess what? So guess what he's hearing from this? He's hearing from agents that are upset their guys didn't get drafted. So there you go.
But it's agents who are telling these guys, these kids. Hey, listen, I'll tell you an example. I'm not going to tell you the player's name, but there's a player who somewhere down in the South was advised to come out this year, and there was a large insurance policy for him. He should have come out. He would have been a top 15 pick.
Yep, I know who you're talking about.
Yes. and he made a choice to stay in school. Now, would he have slipped in the draft? I don't think so because this class is weak in that position. But he made a good choice. He made a choice to stay in school. I think that's always a good choice until the point in time when you look at an Adrian Hubbard, who 2 years ago was no worse than a second round pick, and
Are we
this
sure
year,
about that though?
yeah, I mean he got
According to who though? Because I got to be
the
honest
board,
with you, Scott.
the
I
advisory
don't
board gave
know.
him a huge grade, Josh.
Okay, because I mean I don't know what he looked like on film then, but I graded him about a month ago and I thought he was undraftable. So
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing with that. I know that he was he had a down year, which happens, which is sort of the argument for when you are going to come out, when you're going to get guaranteed money, when you're in a situation where you need that, you should come out, you should get that money. I know that he had a second round grade from the board,
okay,
um, and that's what they told him like 2 years ago. So I mean, there are so many ways to look at this. At the end of the day, what would you advise your kids to do? And if my kids are in a situation where they can make money from the NFL, I'd want them to get it as soon as possible. Um, but I can also understand how you'd want your kids to stay in school, and it's just a tough situation. It's one of those things that I don't know that there's an answer with juniors declaring and the draft getting flooded with as many players as came out this year. I mean, we have a friend, Greg Linton, who's on Twitter. I think he's at Agent Linton, and he
yep.
was talking about this. He called this 3 months ago.
Oh yeah.
There'll be a ton of disappointed people after the draft. I think at the end of the day, it's you get a grade from the advisory board, and again, I'm not part of this process, so it's easy for me to have this opinion. But you get a grade from the advisory board, and if you have good agents who are there to protect you and work for you, that should be where you go. Unfortunately, that's probably not reality. That's probably not the reality in which how agents work. We've seen. We'll get into the NFL draft in a second, but we've seen how agents can do a really good job working for their clients. I would say Blake Bortles' agent and whoever was representing him did a great job this year.
No question.
I would say Mike Evans' guy, Derek Gilmore, did a phenomenal job getting him drafted this year, and he did the same thing with Fluker last year. So it's not one of those things where I mean, you can see it, and then by the same token, you look at a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, whose agent really didn't stop the bleeding. He just never seemed to make an effort to help him.
Just completely hands off. Just
Yeah.
went by the thought that the film's going to stand as is. Meanwhile, Blake Bortles is going to the combine, throwing there.
Yeah, doing
much
everything.
more engaging with teams, and obviously had he had a nice boost in the public's eye.
Yeah,
once
I mean,
the season ended.
As far as Bridgewater goes, the narrative should never have been, did he throw poorly at at his pro day wearing gloves and all that silliness. The narrative should have been, why should he be the number one overall pick as opposed to Clowney?
Right.
It never was. So what we're going to do over the next 8 weeks is we are going to evaluate each a division. We're gonna hit the NFC West tonight, and we're gonna hit every pick that was made, and then Josh, you're gonna specifically talk about how you think some of these guys fit and what we could expect. I don't know if you want to do it. You want to go so far as to say as rookies, but if you want to, just talk about what you're expecting from them. So
real quick to explain that, Scott. Every year during preseason, I've had a little ho-dunk hole-in-the-wall site a couple years ago called Rookie Scouts, and last year I did the same thing for Brian Perez at first-round grade. And basically what I did is I selected a group of rookies from each team and followed them throughout preseason, kind of grading their film off that, and then tried to project what they were going to be able to do for their team short term and how they projected long term. So I was looking at in terms of how an NFL would scout the NFL. Yeah, it's a different process from them scouting college for NFL. And in terms of the grades aren't necessarily A, B, C, D, E. The grades are He's a starter with Pro Bowl potential. He's a core starter. He's a backup. He's a priority, or he's practice squad guy. So that's kind of the lens I'm going to look at and try and project where these guys are going to fit in. And some of that obviously is going to be based on the team they're on. So it's not necessarily a grade on what I think of them as a player. It's really a lot of it has to do with where they fit now. We're going to see a lot of that tonight, especially talking about the NFC West, just because we're talking about San Fran and Seattle, teams that are very, very, very deep and have a minimal number of roster spots available to them. But go ahead, Scott.
Well, let's hit Arizona first, and I'll be quick with how this went. And we're not going to talk about trades unless something stands out.
Mm-hmm.
So here I'm going to talk about trade. The Cardinals moved down a few spots in round 1 and acquired an extra third-round pick. They moved down, and we think they might have got the player they might have been targeting all along, and that's Dion.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, we've kind of heard that. That seems to be where how it shook out. They went with Dion Buchanan, the strong safety from Washington State. And with Tyrann Mathieu, that's an interesting mix. Was he a little bit of a reach there? I don't know. Second round with pick 52 overall, they took Troy Nicholas, tight end from Notre Dame. In round 3, they had 2 early picks. They went with Kareem Martin, the defensive end for North Carolina. You made a good point about him earlier, Josh. And then they went with a small school kid, wide receiver. We both saw in Tampa, John Brown from Pittsburgh State.
Yep, I want to talk about him for quite a bit.
That's fine. And then Logan Thomas, quarterback, Virginia Tech in round 4. Ed Stinson, defensive end from Alabama in rounds 5. And in round 6, they took Walt Powell from Murray State. He's a cornerback. So that's it. That was what they did. I thought if they were going to draft Buchanan anyway, that it was fine for them to move down 5 or whatever spots, 7 spots, whatever it was. I think they had picked.
They had pick number 20. So
yeah, so they moved spots. Yeah. And they picked up the third round, and they used that to acquire John Brown. So, what do you see from specifically Dion Buchanan and Troy Nicholas? Well, I think you're going to want to talk about the first 4 rounds, the first 4 picks, I should say.
Yeah. Let's focus on those. I could talk a little bit about Logan Thomas and Stinson, but let's focus on the first 4. Those are the big ones we're going to see most of this year. Dion Buchanan, I definitely see him. Excuse me, as a future NFL starter. I think he's really kind of an average guy. To me, he might be somewhat similar to Eric Reed from LSU coming out, and obviously he went to San Francisco, and just kind of solidifying that back end. That was a hole they had. They didn't necessarily need the ultimate playmaker, because they have Tyrann Mathieu, as you mentioned. But having a steady guy on the back end that also has some size, some athletic ability, ability to hit and run, that's Dion Buchanan. So while I didn't have this high of a grade on him, I think you're looking at a starter for them very quickly, if not week 1. So that to me is a solid pick. Because really, when you're getting to the end of the first round, obviously everyone wants the all-pro guy, but at that point you're looking for starters. So
yeah,
in that sense of the term, Dion Buchanan I think is going to be a nice pick. Troy Nicholas to me is more about the fit with Bruce Arians, because you look at him on film, he's a big, good-looking kid, 6'6", 270-ish. Has some athleticism. I don't think he's real explosive or fluid. But what he can do and what he's very competitive with is blocking, and that's something that Arians is very, very big on, and that's something I'm not sure Arizona currently has. So he's going to help in that respect immediately. In terms of being a receiver, I think he's going to have major struggles. Not only is he not real quick or explosive or elusive, his route running is absolutely atrocious. Might be the worst in his class, Scott. There were times where I had to go back and rewind and play a couple plays over again and watch him round off routes to the boundary by a good 5 to 10 yards. So it was pretty ugly, and obviously he was an underclassman that came out. So there's something to build on there. But I think with him, you're looking at this stage a backup with the ability to develop into a starter.
I think that makes. I mean, your pick. It's pick 52.
Yes. Again, if you're looking for starters in the first round, second and third round, your day two, you want guys that are going to be able to contribute immediately. And Troy Nicholas is certainly going to do that, at least in capacity in terms of his ability to block. But I think long term, he looks like a number 2 tight end to me.
Yeah, and again, pick 52. We talked during the draft because we did it. We talked specifically about how certain guys fit into where they ended up, and
Yes.
it just seemed like for what they like to do and what they're looking for, he might have been I mean, I think Nicholas is a really good fit for this offense. Does that?
And that's something we're going to talk about with pretty much all the remaining picks too, whether
Yeah.
we're that big on them or not. The fit is perfect for what they're looking for.
Yeah. So I mean, is he going to be a 65 plus catch tight end? Probably not.
I don't ever see
He's
that.
going to be a kid who down the line is a pretty dominant inline blocker with some receiving potential. Yeah. So you can understand why at pick 52 overall, midway in round 2, that makes a lot of sense. A little later in actually round 2. Let's move on to Kareem Martin.
Something else real quick to think about with that. One of the positions they could have addressed, and some people expected them to address within the first 2 rounds, is right tackle. They still have Bobby Massey there, and he's a waist bender that really struggles out in space, and they really don't have anyone behind him that's real efficient to step in for him. But one of the ways you can do that, if you don't feel comfortable with an offensive tackle there, is take a blocking tight end, and that could certainly help. Remember, Detroit did that a few years ago with Brandon Pettigrew. Now, Pettigrew is a more dynamic athlete, brings a little more to the table to him, but it's the same premise. Instead of reaching for the 8th, 9th, 10th offensive tackle at that point, take a good, solid tight end that brings a little bit of versatility and also can help your current offensive tackle on the edge there.
Yeah, I think that's why systematically it fits perfectly what they need. Kareem Martin, defensive end for North Carolina. Yeah. You made a point about him earlier. About being a 34 defensive end using his length.
Yeah.
Perfect fit for him.
Yeah, you look at him, I mean, he's a long kid. He's going to have to add weight. I don't see that being a problem at all with his frame. Not a real explosive kid, though, so that's why I want him in a 34. That's where he's going to play at Arizona. I think for now he's going to be a backup. He has the potential to develop into a starter, though. I think he's got some next level skills that are going to help him out. But he should be a solid backup, solid rotational guy this year.
Yeah, and if that's what he is, and I think we need to be specific about what we think is a good value pick. If you get a second contract out of any of these guys, that's a good pick. I don't even care if that's a first rounder. I think that.
Yes.
There's so many busts that come out of the first round that even if a guy doesn't play at a high level, but you get you mentioned Pettigrew. He got a second contract from the Lions. I know they took him at 20 overall, and I know that he's underwhelmed, but still, he got a second contract. He's going to play for 6, 7, 8 years for that team. If any of these guys do that, these are home run picks. Let's go to John Brown, and then we'll move to a different team because we're going to need to move this along. We both saw him in Tampa. We both thought he was explosive, electric, but very, very small.
Yeah.
What do you think as far as what he can offer to the offense here?
Yeah, that size is the one negative, I guess you could say, with him. But man, he was super impressive down there, wasn't he?
He was.
Just such a. You don't think a guy from Pittsburgh State is going to come in like this, but such a polished route runner, very smooth in and out of his breaks, very efficiently. He could set up moves. He kind of had a little shoulder fake, a little elusiveness to him. Consistently plucked the ball away from his body, which is something that's big for any receiver, but certainly one that has such a limited frame like him. You think of Andre Roberts and them losing him to Washington in the offseason, and that's exactly, to me, he is what they wanted Andre Roberts to be. And excuse me, that's that threat out of the slot that's savvy enough to run those intermediate routes,
I
but
was
has
just
the
going to use that word.
explosiveness
Not
also.
to interrupt you, but savvy is how I would describe him.
Yeah,
And he displayed that in Tampa. He was, like you said, with the head and shoulder fakes and the ability to get his head around and find the ball really quick. I think
yep.
that was one of the things that stood out the most,
You, you
even
know,
with different quarterbacks.
yeah, we when we interviewed Jason Mero a few weeks back, he talked about his relationship with Wes Welker and Welker talking to him about how to run routes, and that's the kind of thing that I see with him now. I'm not trying to compare him to 6'6" tight end or Wes Welker. That's not fair to him. But at the same time, when you talk about use the word savviness in his routes, the ability to understand leverage and use his body positioning to get himself open, I think that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I agree. Let's move to the San Francisco 49ers because we need to kind of move this along.
Yeah, yeah.
This it seemed like every pick they made was either interesting from hinting at what they were going to do down the road, or interesting from a sense that it was a player that they could simply just redshirt and not have to worry about this year. We know that they're going to be players that they did that from last year. We know that Tank Carradine is going to come in and take a roster spot this year.
Yep.
We think Marcus Lattimore might. I think the Carlos Hyde selection gives you an idea as to what they know about what's going on with Lattimore. So in round one, I think one of the values, they get one of the better players at the back of round one, Jimmy Ward, especially for what they need to do, which is improve their coverage. Last year you took Eric Reed. This year you take Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward's an outstanding coverage athlete. He's everything that you want, roaming in center field. So much so that I think he could play nickel cornerback for them early.
I expect him to. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do too. Round two, Carlos Hyde, running back, Ohio State. It's almost like the perfect fit for when Frank Gore is finished. Carlos Hyde kind of just steps in and becomes Frank Gore.
Yep.
In round three, they got what I would consider to be just a ridiculous value of Marcus Martin, versatile interior lineman from USC. Another value in inside linebacker who I think will get who will be able to rush the passer, and Chris Borland from Wisconsin. Another pick in round three who they're going to redshirt this year. He's not going to play is Brandon Thomas from the tackle from Clemson, but that's a good value. For what they're doing and especially for what they need, which is versatility with that roster and especially with how many picks they had.
Yes.
Round four, wide receiver Bruce Ellington. Good Lord. At the end of round four, big cornerback from North Carolina State, Dante Johnson. Couple picks in round five, Aaron Lynch from South Florida, defensive end. I think he's a bit of an enigma at this point. Another cornerback from Florida Atlanta, Keith Reeser. I think they're going to redshirt him too. And then cornerback from SMU, Kenneth Acker in round six. Caleb Ramsey, defensive end from Boston College in round seven. And at this point in time, you're just hoping that you're flinging stuff on the wall, hope it sticks.
Right. Yeah, you're hoping for practice squad guys at this point.
And then last pick, they took fullback Trey Millard from Oklahoma. So let's try.
That's one of my favorite picks in the draft. Yep.
What's that?
That's one of my favorite picks in the whole draft. I love Trey Millard. Ridiculous. Yeah, and when you think about, and I'm sorry, I'll highlight him real quick just because I think he's worth mentioning, especially a late round pick like that I think can compete for a lot of playing time right away. When you think about what Delaney Walker did when he was in San Francisco, not really a blocking guy, but his ability to get out on play action, line up at a number of spots, whether it be inline tight end, fullback, H-back, catch passes out of the backfield, take a couple of carries. That's Trey Millard, except Trey Millard has great hands. So he's not going to frustrate you to no end with all the drops that Delaney Walker had. So getting a guy like him that they know how to use him because they've had comparable players, they like having versatility with their guys. That was just a home run pick for them.
Well, let's focus in on just a few so we can hit everybody. But I think everybody kind of knows what Jimmy Ward's expected to do, and everybody knows what Carlos Hyde is. Talk about Marcus Martin and how he fits with what they're doing now, and maybe what the hint is as to what they're going to do down the road.
Yeah, and I want to lump him in with Brandon Thomas as well.
Yeah,
Here's the bottom line. They've got a lot of superstars on that team. Duh. That's why they're in the running for the Super Bowl every year. They can only pay so many of them because of the salary cap. Uh, Kaepernick's one they're going to have to pay by the end of the year. He's gonna require a huge contract. Everyone knows this, and I think he's entirely worth it. But that's another topic.
yeah,
They've got those two inside linebackers. Got to pay them. You got the two bookend offensive tackles. They've already paid them. So that means that at some point, someone's going to get left out of the money. And I think it's pretty clear with uh, the two offensive linemen they drafted last weekend that Mike Iupati is going to be a free agent next year and will not be re-signed by them. And that's part of the thinking here. Now with Martin, you get again the versatility. They have a brand new starter at center this year, Daniel Kilgore. He's been with them a couple of years, waiting his turn. He's kind of been that sixth lineman in on their jumbo packages. He looks like he's gonna get the start at center this year. But Martin is big enough, strong enough to play guard as well. So I think what you're looking at this year from him is a guy that can play all three interior positions, which is always huge if you have that kind of versatility with your guys. That's something that saved a team like New England time and time again, just because they've been able to roll through and withstand injuries because they have so many guys able to play so many different positions. But I think eventually he's either going to be a starting left guard, or Kilgore could end up being there and Martin could end up being the center in a year or two. So I think he's a real solid backup this year and a future starter. And then you already mentioned Thomas, same deal. That
yeah.
they don't have to play him this year. I imagine they'll probably find a way to stash him on IR and then unveil him next year. And who knows? Alex Boone starts asking for too much money. They might have that position covered too.
Yeah, and then so let's hit two more real quick, and then we'll move to the Rams. Chris Borland and Bruce Ellington. Because
Yep.
I think that they both can make an impact in year one.
Oh, absolutely. Borland first. I think again versatility. You can do so much with him. They might be starting the year without one of their two studs at inside linebacker, and Borland is such a heady, instinctive player. He can step in and start immediately, in my opinion. If personally, if I were Denver, I rather would have had Borland in the first round than taking a risk on a character guy and Roby, the
Yeah.
cornerback from. But that's how highly I think of Chris Borland and his skill set. And as you mentioned briefly earlier, one of the other great things about him is his ability to rush the passer. He's got the explosiveness, quickness. He's got good hand usage. He kind of understands how to avoid guys. Sounds kind of like Kyle Van Noy, doesn't it?
A little bit. A little bit.
But again, that's something that San Fran's had problems with last year. I don't think there was efficient rushing the passer as they wanted to be. Obviously, Alden Smith's been in and out of the lineup. We don't know where his status is, so I think he's going to help them a lot on third down at least this year.
And one of the things I think that stands out, and again, it's more about fit, is they have a big defensive line, right?
Yes.
And the big bodies up front, and Borland should have, with how good his instincts are and his ability to find the ball, he shouldn't. I mean, one of the knocks is he had short arms and he wasn't going to be able to shed blockers. But in this situation, I don't know that he's going to have to be doing a ton of that. I think he's just going to be getting to the ball. I think it's a perfect fit for what his skill set is. And I
Yep.
think you're right. I think if Navarro Bowman is not ready to go, Borland steps in. And while, yeah, it's a drop-off from Bowman because Bowman's a stud, it's not like you're not going to get killed at that position. What do you think of Ellington in this offense?
Yeah. My first thought is obviously you know this. Some of our listeners, if they follow me on Twitter last year, they might know I was a huge fan of Quentin Patton last year. So I think it's intriguing to see what happens with him. Maybe both of them step up. Maybe they don't trust Patton at this point.
You know what we need to do, Josh? Sorry to interrupt. We also need to include Stevie Johnson in this mix because
Yes.
he was acquired for essentially nothing.
Well. So is remember they signed Brandon LaFell too.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Stevie Johnson or
Well,
Brandon LaFell, at least one of them's not making this roster.
yeah.
I
And we'll immediately go to Cleveland to start.
Yes,
Right?
yes. I think Cleveland's probably just waiting for whichever of those two guys, hoping Stevie Johnson
Yeah, no kidding. That's crazy.
is the
All right,
guy. Yeah,
so clearly we think the 49ers did a really good job of both of I'm not going to say manipulating the process, but when you draft players that are I mean it's crazy to consider a player of value if he, especially when you know he's not going to play for you this year. But
right,
how do you look at Brandon Thomas and not consider that to be a value?
right.
Only with
Especially
the
when you're a team that
49ers.
doesn't have to rely on him right away.
I know it's just, but that's the thing is that's a situation where you look and you think, all right, there's value in a player who comes in with a torn ACL and is not going to play for you for a year. That's 49ers. That's what they do.
Yep.
Uh, I think that they were one of the clear winners in the draft, which shouldn't be a surprise. As frustrating as it is for teams that are trying to stay with them, when you look at Jimmy Ward, Carlos Hyde, Marcus Martin, and Bruce Ellington, and Borland, and Brandon Thomas, and blah blah blah, and on and on and on, uh, you got to hand it to them. They did a really good job. All right, let's go to the St. Louis Rams.
Okay.
And I think the Rams did with their first two picks. I would say I don't even care. I don't even care about the rest of their draft. But if you want to talk about building from, building a team the right way, you grabbed offensive tackle Greg Robinson with the second pick, and now we can argue about whether it should have been Jake Matthews and what that means to putting Greg Robinson on an island as a left tackle right away, where we don't necessarily trust that. But there's really no arguing with, was that a bad pick? No. But when you backed it up and you go Aaron Donald with pick 13, it's incredible to think about the value that you've added to your offensive line and your defensive line. That defensive line's a monster. You put Aaron Donald next to Michael Brockers. You've got Robert Quinn. You've got Chris Long. You've got.
Don't forget about Gerald Hayes.
I mean, there's so much to like about what they've done. So even after that, so obviously it's Robinson and it's Aaron Donald with the two picks in the first round. They go LaMarcus Joyner, quarterback from Florida State, in round 2. In round 3, they went Trey Mason. In round 4, they grabbed Maurice Alexander, big safety from Utah State. Then they had 6 really late picks in this draft, and I'm just going to go through them real fast. 2 6-rounders: E.J. Gaines, cornerback from Missouri; Garrett Gilbert, quarterback from SMU, and then 4 7th-rounders: Mitchell Van Dyke from Portland State is an offensive tackle. C.B. Bryant from, I'm going to say, I think he's a safety. I'm not positive. I think he's a safety.
Yeah, he's a safety.
Ohio State,
Yep.
obviously Michael Sam, defensive end from Missouri, and Demetrius Rainey, a center from Tennessee State. So, it's tough to consider those last 6 picks as players that we think are going to make an impact. So I don't even, I'm not dismissing them, but, let's hit on Robinson and Donald and Joyner and maybe Trey Mason if we want, and there was also a rumor that they tried to trade Isaiah Peed in the draft. Trey Mason is just a guy who basically takes Isaiah Peed's job.
Yeah, Pete's going to be a training camp casualty.
Yes,
guarantee it. They've already, and I don't know if you've already noticed, but they cut Daryl Richardson today.
I saw that.
That's the first of the running back dominoes to fall.
Yep. So it was Zach Stacy, Trey Mason are going to be your
Yep.
combo, your tandem in St. Louis. Trey Mason was an intriguing guy to evaluate because it was, he would get so far down the field before being touched.
Yeah.
I really like what they did. I think that they've made a very bold statement in that division, in that very tough division, to get tougher and to get nastier and to be able to be more disruptive and whether that's with Greg Robinson or Aaron Donald. I really like the Aaron Donald pick. I think that I would have really been happy with him at 10. But people know those guys. What do you know about? So if you want to hit maybe LaMarcus Joyner, Trey Mason, and Mo Alexander, and then we'll move on to Seattle.
Well, a quick point about the first two. I think at this point they understand that, first of all, their number one player on offense is not their quarterback. It's Zach Stacy. So you better be able to run the ball. Greg Robinson gives them the best chance to be able to run the ball efficiently. He's just a monster up front. Um, just based on his run blocking alone, he has a chance to be an elite player. So
Yeah,
that that was not a surprise. I picked two, and it made sense. And then Aaron Donald, the other thing you want to do, especially in that division, is stop the run and stack the front. He not only is going to be able to do that, but he gives you another element of pass rush. It's just
interior pass rush.
yes, exactly the interior pass rush that they don't have right now because
Yeah,
Brockers is really he's really a nose stuck in a five techniques body
yeah. No, I
when you
agree.
look at him.
He's not a guy who's going to get a ton of sacks or pressures,
No,
but,
but he's
but
going to be an
he,
awesome player against the run, which he has been.
yes,
And putting a guy like Aaron Donald next to him that can do some other things, that's going to make him that much better.
yes,
So both those pick, when you think about the current personnel they have, really fits what they need. Gives them another dimension of what they're looking for. Lamarcus Joyner, I remember tweeting this out when I graded him. Uh, probably sometime in March is when I looked at all the Florida State guys that I thought he was a top of the fourth round guy, but if he were 2 inches taller, he'd be a solid second rounder. Well, he went in the second round regardless. He's an instinctive, aggressive guy. He doesn't play like he's small. Even to an extent, I think he plays bigger than a guy like Jason Verrett, who went in
yeah.
the first round to San Diego. You just love everything he does coming forward. He could probably play a little bit of safety, so he offers some versatility there. And
I was just
honestly,
going to ask if you thought that he was going to transition to be maybe a nickel corner and a free safety at the NFL level.
my guess is they'll want him to play some safety. I'm not sure that that's his real full-time position. I really think he's a nickel corner, and that's why I
Okay.
gave him a fourth-round grade. And I think that's probably primarily what we'll see him this year. But considering their safety position, which I don't know that much about Mo Alexander, but I don't know that they have, real
He's
solid.
enormous.
He's
He's
what?
enormous. He's a
Well,
huge.
yes, he's huge. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
6'1", 220-ish.
yeah.
Um, but outside of that, I don't know that they have a real solution there besides the guys that are currently on their roster. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him step back and play a little bit of safety too. That's as much a testament to his ability against the run as it is a knock on his size.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I agree. I agree. I do think that you're right, though. I think nickel corner and a little bit of free safety is where,
Yeah.
especially in year one, is where I would think that you would look at him. What do you see from Trey Mason as a rookie?
Yeah, I know this is a guy I think you looked at quite a bit.
I did it. I liked him. I liked him a
Yeah.
lot.
Well, and he's a little bit speedier guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you think about what you have in Zach Stacy, Stacy's not a real big guy, but still he's strong. He's real uh, great vision in inside, just a real tough runner inside, real elusive at the point of attack, not necessarily out in space.
Right.
But Mason kind of brings a different dimension of that because he's got a little bit more speed and quickness.
Yeah. Maybe stretch power is what I would consider him to
Yeah,
be. You'd want to run stretch plays and and toss plays where you're running behind Robinson who's pulling, which makes sense because that's a lot of what they did in Auburn.
yeah,
Again, he was a tough guy to evaluate because you know when you're 7-8 yards down the field before you're seeing your first bit of contact, you can't really get all that. You can't. What are you gleaning from that?
right. We
It's
had that
tough.
problem with Alabama running backs the last couple years. I wasn't very high on Eddie Lacy, but and in part I didn't think he had great vision, and I think he really benefited from the holes his line was able to produce in front of him. But you put him in a great situation over in Green Bay where they like to spread the field out and give him space, and he's really excelled out there as a rookie. And then you look at Trent Richardson, went through the same program, was everybody's best running back since Adrian Peterson. He's been just about a total flop at this point.
Yep.
So it's tough when you get in those situations with those college programs with that big time offensive line when you're dealing with guys like Warmack and Robinson blocking in front of them.
And Fluker.
Yes.
Yeah, I just that's the thing. I think Trey Mason could be a little bit of. I think he could be a little disappointing as a rookie, just because maybe he's not going to be as explosive and rattling off 15-yard runs consistently like he did
Hmm.
last year. But okay, let's hit Seattle because Seattle to me, while they didn't have a lot of draft currency, they made 3 picks that I thought were phenomenal. Um, Now the kid they took in round 2, I think most would consider to be overdrafted at this point until they see him play
Right.
with what his natural ability is and what that offense does. It's absurd, and that's receiver Paul Richardson from Colorado. I don't think a lot of people got to see him play this year because Colorado was so bad. He is he's as natural a deep threat as I think has entered the league in a while. Um, I don't know if that sounds like an overstatement, but one of the things he just runs away from people so naturally, and it's not just long speed; it's quickness too. And then they grabbed a player who I think we all scratched our head, Justin Britt, the guard from Missouri,
Yep.
in the at the end of round 2. That was a head scratcher, a little bit, but in
Especially
round
considering their need
yes,
at both guard and right tackle. It's just that there are so many other guys on the board at that point in time that I thought could have outproduced him.
yep,
Morgan Moses, didn't he end up going in the third round?
I believe so. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. That's gonna be an interesting one to watch between those two, who
yeah.
ends up playing more and who's more effective because Morgan Moses is going to start on day one for Washington at right tackle.
Yeah, he is. And again, I don't know much about Britt. I've seen a little bit.
Yeah, I can't really speak to his game, but
Yeah, I think that it's fair to say that we had higher graded guards on the board still, though. But
yes.
for, it is what it is. In the first pick they made in round 4 is a player I think they hit a home run on. It's Cassius Marsh, the defensive end from UCLA. We know situations where scouts from teams have watched UCLA film and consistently wanting to see Anthony Barr make plays, and they
Hmm.
walk away saying, "Wow, that kid opposite him, number I think it was 99, just made so many plays." Cassius Marsh is a really good value. He's one of those guys that you just know he's going to go to the Seahawks and he's going to make plays. He's a really good pick there. And then Kevin Norwood, the receiver from Alabama, that's a phenomenal pick.
Yep.
Real sure-handed kid,
It's
a kid.
appropriate value there. Yep.
Yeah, just a kid who it's going to make plays for you. And Seattle, as much as that offense looks as good as it looks with Marshawn Lynch running the ball and them being just efficient, I think you've added some weapons that really makes them a more dynamic offense. I'm not saying Norwood's a dynamic receiver, but he's a chain mover. Paul Richardson sure is. And when you look at that roster, when you look at the guys that are going to be free agents after this coming year, you can see a lot of them you can see them shedding a lot of those guys and being done with them because Norwood's a guy that can come in and play right away. He's gonna make home run plays constantly. So to finish the draft, they went with a pick I consider to be another value, Kevin Pierre-Louis, the outside linebacker, possible safety. I'm not sure. It depends on what they think. He's a very small linebacker, but he can really move. In the 4th round, 5th round they went Jimmy Staton. I want to say he's a defensive tackle from Middle Tennessee
Yes.
State.
Yep.
I don't know anything about him. Garrett Scott, the tackle from Marshall in round 6. Eric Pinkins, who actually I heard a lot about. Seems like a lot of people liked him. The safety from San Diego State in round 6, and then
He's got that size they love at the position.
yep, and then they finished with Kiro Small, a running back from Arkansas. So they didn't have a first-round pick. I think that was part of the Harvin deal. I do
Well,
believe.
no. They did have a first round pick. What happened was,
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
was
What
it there was a player they were targeting there, and I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh shoot.
was it? It was Dominic Easley, I believe.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. They were targeting Dominic Easley,
Well,
so
they
when
moved
New
out
England
twice,
take him, they
right?
decided, oh, we got to get out of here.
Yeah, so they moved down twice. I don't know
Right.
who jumped up with them. No, it was Minnesota
It
for
was
Bridgewater.
Minnesota for Bridgewater, and then Detroit for Van Noy.
Correct. So clearly they didn't find the value that they needed at the end of round 1. Um, what do you see out of this this group that we just mentioned? Is there anybody that stands out to you as
Well, the three picks you like, they all share something in common in the way they're going to be able to play this year. Seattle's in a situation, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, and we talked about it a bit with San Francisco, where they have so much depth, they can take guys that they feel excel at one particular thing. They don't need the all-encompassing perfect prospect. So in Paul Richardson, they got the guy that could take the top off the defense. They really don't have that right now in their roster. And when you think about the kind of hodgepodge of wide receivers and what they did in that Super Bowl against Denver, it's a bunch of guys that do a bunch of little different things well, and so
Right.
Richardson really fits in with that. And I think Norwood's the same thing. Norwood, you're getting a guy that's going to be able to come in and play immediately. We talked to him a few weeks ago, and we were really impressed with not only his intelligence in the game, obviously his hands on film, outstanding hands,
Yeah.
but his understanding of the team process and of his role. He's going to be a perfect fit there. I would not be surprised at all if he outproduced Paul Richardson. And that's not necessarily a knock on Richardson. He just does a different thing.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think Norwood is ready to make an impact right now,
All I
despite
can
him
see
not.
out of Richardson is I can see Wilson breaking the pocket, and
Oh yeah,
you
no
know,
question.
lots of that.
No question. Yeah, it's one of those where I mean it's just going to be one of those adjustments for him, and they're going to say every time he's breaking a pocket, you're hitting deep.
Yes.
Yep, and Norwood will be coming the other direction, coming back to him.
And that's exactly why he might be more productive,
Yep.
from a number of catches perspective. But Richardson will certainly have a bigger yard, average per catch.
Yep.
We saw Marsh at the Shrine game. Did he stand out to you there? Did you see anything that
No, he really didn't do anything
I didn't see it
there
either.
that I really saw all week. I didn't see anything in particular, but I mean, that, again, you can't grade these guys just off of the bowl games. I mean, he has a particular skill set. Again, he's a rotational guy they can put in. I know a lot of people really like what he can do as far as the pass rush, and they've got, again, position they can fill in, position they can take in the future so that they don't have to sign other high-priced guys. Maybe he takes over Cliff Avrill's role and starts playing that role starting. I mean, we'll see him a little bit this year, I imagine, but I wouldn't be surprised if this year he was inactive on game day quite a bit, then all of a
Yeah, I
sudden
think he's
list some.
developing. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think he's a value because I think you nailed it with the Averill. Averill signed. I want to say he signed a 2-year deal. I
Right.
can see a situation where Mars he's ready to play some kind of a role in some way 2 years from now.
Yep.
And
Which
there's
is really that's all Cliff Averill does. He's he's a one down player. They don't play him on the rush.
I'm assuming you're talking third down because he's not going to
Yes.
defend the run for you. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and
That's all he
that's the
does
thing.
is he rushes the pass and he does it very well.
He does, absolutely he does.
Yeah.
But if Marsh can do a little bit of that and make it, and it's cheaper for them because they're going to have issues signing all these guys too. I mean,
Right.
Earl,
Also, he's also insurance for Bruce Irvin, who
yeah,
light hasn't really clicked for him yet. He's that one. Well, I shouldn't say one first round pick. They've had problems with figuring that guard position out. But
yeah,
he's that one in that defense that it just hasn't put together, and this might be a make it or break it year for him.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see what he does. I think with the guard position is very intriguing. I think we look at a Justin Britt and you think, there's another guard that they may have you might consider him to be a little bit of a reach at that point, especially I'm not sure exactly. I remember thinking during the draft that wow, there are a lot of guards on the board that I would have.
Oh,
I think
so
are
many
ready
at
to
that
come in
point.
pretty
Yeah.
sooner. Trey Turner, Gabe
Yes.
Jackson,
Billy Turner.
yes. I mean, and that's the thing. Can you draft some of these guys who you can kick inside early and then move them out to the edge?
Right.
To me, it
That's
was
why. See, I thought Billy Turner in particular was just such a perfect pick for Seattle, just because he's got that mentality that he wants to eat your children, the Mike Tyson thing.
yes. Yeah.
And you could kick him inside at guard to start off with. They have needs there, so he'll fill in just fine. He'll be competitive. He'll be strong. He can fit in there, and he can develop into the offensive tackle down the line. So he's going to have some versatility too. That just seemed like a perfect pick to me. Um, I mean, again, you and I haven't seen him, but people we trust have told us that Justin Britt is a big reach, and that's the one position where you look at this regime's draft history where they've had some real struggles with taking guys like James Carpenter way too high. So we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. This regime certainly gets the benefit of the doubt from me, but they need Justin Britt to be able to start right away because that is a big hole for them right now.
Well, and the thing is and he's played both left tackle and right tackle at Missouri, and they're
Yep.
moving him to guard at the NFL level. To me, I
Yeah.
think there were better prospects. You mentioned one in Billy Turner, to be able to do that and maybe be better, more physical. Who knows? It's one of those things where maybe it's one of those positions that they seem to struggle with. It clearly was a reach. Uh, I think that most people considered him to maybe be a late third, early fourth type of guy, and you grabbed him in the late second round. We'll see how he develops. Again, I think when you with a team that moved out twice to get some of the value they got, it's very impressive. And I remember thinking last year we were together for the draft, and remember thinking that every pick the 49ers made and the Seahawks made, it was like an arms race.
Yeah.
Every pick was one-upping the other one. It didn't have that feel this year. That didn't. I know the 49ers, I thought, did a great job.
Yeah, I don't think Seattle made that same splash at all.
I don't think they did, and obviously you don't feel that way if they move out twice. So, and then you take a player like Paul Richardson, who a lot of people I think consider to be a bit of a reach. I don't think he is at all. But
Yeah, you and I differ on him a little bit. I know
yeah.
you're really enamored with his speed, which I get. But yeah, there are probably other guys I would have preferred at that point too. But again, as part of what they do, what they're missing on that team, I understand the fit completely.
Yes, but it just doesn't make it for like, looking at the 49ers and seeing Jimmy Ward and Carlos Hyde and Chris
Right.
Bolden and all that stuff. At the end of the day, I think they all, during the draft was going on, and you're thinking almost every pick that comes off the board, you were thinking that really fits for what they do, and that it's really interesting for what they're doing. I think to me, I think the Rams had. I think the Rams really helped themselves with obviously the tackle and both tackles actually between Robinson and Donald. I thought they did a great job addressing those two positions. But I think the 49ers were maybe clearing the way. They had a great draft, and it just seems like that seems to happen over and over. So you got to give Trent Baalke and whatever's going on out there some credit for doing what they do. It was very impressive. Accumulating the talent that they've accumulated, and then being able to redshirt some of these guys and knowing they're just not going to play right away. It's impressive.
Yep. Yep. Again, when you're a team like San Francisco that has all that talent, and you get 4, 5 picks that project as future starters good enough to allow you to let other good players not currently on your roster go. That's awfully impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you sustain success. That and good quarterback play, and I think they're going to have both for a long time.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think that's the most impressive about what they're doing is
Yep.
it is about the future for them. It is.
Yep, and I want to say one quick point on Seattle too. We mentioned some of the redshirt guys that San Fran had. Um, there's a couple in Seattle too.
Jesse Williams.
Yeah, Jesse Williams in particular. I think he's an absolute stud. I think he's going to be awesome. Obviously, he had the knee injury he was working through last year, so he basically took a red shirt. But I think he can just be that total power pig up front, just clogging the run up. And I think he's a little more skilled as an interior pass rusher than people expect for a man his size. Then you got Christian Michael. I wasn't very high on him last year, and he struggled to get on the field. But again, you've got a guy that's a dynamic talent who knows? Another year, maybe the light goes on, and all of a sudden you've got a really, really solid number two running back too. So
Yeah, and stylistically, very similar to the guy who's leading you right now.
yes,
So, yeah, I mean, by no stretch am I saying that I think the 49ers have leaped over the Seahawks. No, no. Because I think what the Seahawks need, uh, the concept of Paul Richardson running free as Russell Wilson is breaking the pocket and extending plays, to me, it's a little bit. It's going to look like Mike Wallace from 3 years ago with Big Ben.
that's pretty
Um,
fair actually. That's actually a pretty fair comp.
yeah, and that's kind of. I thought that Richardson's value in this was going to be where he fit, where he fit, and what his fit was. I think it's a home run with Wilson's ability to extend plays. I think it's one of those things where you had to address a position. You had to get a weapon. I think of Percy Harvin and Richardson now with Kevin Norwood, with Doug Baldwin, with Marshawn Lynch, with everything they're doing. That's an incredible offense. Uh, and again, in no ways am I saying that I think the 49ers have leaped them via a draft class. I think that 49ers did a good job, but the Seahawks just won the Super Bowl, so they deserve some credit. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to be in that division trying to compete with those guys. But you look at what the Rams did, addressing with Robinson and Aaron Donald. I think that helps you tremendously. I think that the Cardinals did. I don't know. I mean, I thought Dion Buchanan was a little bit of a reach where they got him. I think, again, it's a fit thing. I'm not sure how he fits. Although with Tyrann Mathieu, I think it's interesting that you grabbed a box safety who can move, a big kid. It was an interesting draft for the NFC West. I think all those teams got better. We'll see how quickly that it gets implemented in year one.
hmm Yeah, I think again we're looking at this as the top division in the NFL. If Arizona's in any other division, as long as they get competent play from Carson Palmer, they're competing for a division title. They might be the third best team in the conference behind those two. And again, St. Louis, it's gonna be dependent on Bradford because they put everything around him on both sides of the ball that they really need. They have a lot of pieces in place, so it's put up or shut up time for Bradford.
It really is, and it's good time for that to happen because he's a free agent after 2015, correct? Or is it after
No,
this year?
this is it. Remember, same as Sue,
Okay, so
same year as Sue. So this is it.
yeah, but we have to look at Bradford's deal to see if he has the ability to excise that fifth year. I gotta look.
This isn't this the fifth year?
I think this could be his fourth year.
He's drafted 2010, right?
I don't know.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
We gotta look. I thought he was a free agent in 2015. Um,
I might be wrong.
no, it doesn't matter. But the point remains that this entire
Either way, I think it's a moot point because if he doesn't put up this year, they're going to be looking next year for someone else.
without a doubt, because you can't. I mean, that team has to be able to be competitive with.
And I know this is his last year. And I'm sorry for anyone listening, just relating it back to Detroit. But remember, it's all the 11s like Nick Fairley that we're talking about that fifth year option.
Yes, yes. I'm gonna look it up real quick. But
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we look at their weapons. Tavon Austin's got to play better. He has to.
Yep.
I think you're looking at Stedman Bailey got suspended for 4 games?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that really hurts. That's the one position they didn't really address. A lot of people thought that they might go and get a wide receiver. Now, that being said, some of them were calling for them to do that with pick 13. Not number one, all the top receivers were gone at that point, other than Marquise Lee, who ended up going in the second round because of some lingering injury concerns. But
Bradford is signed through 2015.
oh, okay,
He
I
signed a
stand
6-year
corrected.
deal, which is weird. I don't know how that worked, but
Yeah, how'd that happen?
I don't know. I don't know. He signed it. He signed
Oh,
it.
you know what? That's because it's the last year of the old CBA. That's why.
You are correct.
Yes.
So he's got 2 years, but he's not going to be able to play poorly and get a pass on this.
Right.
So this is an evaluation year, and it's one of the things that we talked about why Jake Matthews might have made a little more sense at the top of at the top of the draft with their needs to keep him upright and healthy, and so they could fully evaluate him.
Yep.
We'll see how he does. They have enough talent on offense that they should be productive. But I think you're right. I think that they're going to be a power run team with Zach Stacy and Trey Mason and Greg Robinson certainly fits that. Defensively, they're going to be as disruptive as any team in the NFL with that defensive line and the guys that they can bring off the edge. It's a matter of can they play better in coverage? How does Janoris Jenkins bounce back after he had a great rookie year, but maybe not such a good year last year?
No.
Do they get better safety play? It's going to matter in that division. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes up. So that's going to wrap it up for tonight. We'll be back. We'll be back next week, and we will hit the. You want to do the NFC South next week?
Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll hit the NFC South, and we'll open it up for some questions, and if people want to come in and specifically ask about their favorite team and some of the moves that were made, there were some interesting, intriguing picks that were made. I think we'll be able to do that, and so next week it'll be NFC South, and we'll just kind of move along over the next 7 weeks. And we'll hit each division, and at that point in time, we won't be too far away from camps opening up and some exciting things happening. So,
yep, that's the one thing about the draft being later. It means the NFL season is that much closer.
Yeah. I mean, we're not too far away from camp opening up, so it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. So that's it for Draft Day Central Radio. We will be back next week again with the NFC South, and we'll break down the picks that were made and what we expect. And we thank everybody for joining us. I am Scott Bischoff. You can find me on Twitter at Bischoff_Scott.
And I'm Josh Liskowitz. So look for me on Twitter at Josh Liskowitz.
There you go. And then make sure you subscribe to our show on iTunes and for that matter, all of the Pro Football Central shows. Lots of things happening here. And again, thank you for joining us. We are Draft Day Central Radio. We'll be back next week.